Whether you're preparing for sleep, seeking a moment of calm during a hectic day, or simply looking to relax, welcome to Eerie Embers. Don't forget to like, subscribe, also share some stories from your part of the world. Hit the lights, get comfy, and let's begin the journey. I've read enough no sleep to freak myself out more times than I can count. But I always figured I was just one of those boring people who never got haunted, stalked, or nearly murdered by a ghost, demon, or cryptid. But something happened to me 2 weeks ago, and it's been eating away at me ever since. I figured if I didn't tell someone, even if it's strangers on the internet, I'd lose it. I'm a second-year university student in Kyoto. I live about a 15-minute walk from campus, and after a night of studying at the library, I decided to walk home instead of waiting for the late bus. The route takes me through some quieter streets, a residential area with a few vending machines, bicycles, and not much else after 10 p.m. It was maybe 11:30 when I reached the crossing. It's this spot where a narrow footpath intersects a slightly wider road. There's a mirror on a post to help see around the corner, but otherwise, it's dim. Just one old-style street lamp humming quietly above. That's when I saw her. She was standing directly across from me at the other end of the crosswalk. Pale as porcelain, long black hair hanging loose. She wore a beige coat and a long skirt, like something out of the 80s. But what stood out most was the surgical mask covering her face. Not super weird in Japan, especially with allergy season, but the way she was just standing there, staring at me, it made my skin crawl. When the walk signal blinked green, I hesitated. She didn't move. I started across, cautiously, eyes on the ground. Halfway through, I glanced up. She was walking straight toward me now. Not fast, just steady, deliberate steps. Her arms swayed slightly. And even though it was spring, her breath misted in the air like it was freezing. When we were just feet apart, she stopped. "Am I pretty?" she asked. I froze. Her voice was soft, feminine, but there was something else under it, something sharp, like a growl wrapped in silk. Still trying to be polite. Stupid, I know. I nodded slowly and said yes. She tilted her head. Then, in one fluid motion, she reached up and removed the mask. Her mouth stretched wide from cheek to cheek, curved up in a gruesome smile. The skin was pulled taut around deep slits, bloodless but wrong. Unnatural. The lips were smeared with bright red lipstick, exaggerated like a child playing dress-up. She leaned forward slightly. Even now, my legs locked. My brain screamed run, but I couldn't move. I don't know what it was, maybe instinct. Maybe some weird part of me that remembered the urban legends. But I muttered, "You're average." Her face twitched. I think I confused her. maybe even insulted her. The smile froze, her head tilting further, almost bird-like. Then she shrieked. It wasn't human. It was like metal tearing, mixed with an animal's cry. I turned and bolted, nearly tripping over the curb as I sprinted back the way I came. The footsteps behind me were silent, but the shriek echoed again, closer. I ducked into a narrow alley, weaving between garbage bins and scooters. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see if she was there. I didn't stop running until I reached the main road. Neon lights, late-night ramen shops, people. I practically collapsed against a vending machine, sucking in air. She was gone. I didn't sleep that night. Kept every light on. Locked the windows, even though I'm on the second floor. The next day, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a prank. Some messed up performance art. I even searched online for actors or YouTubers doing Kuchisa Kiana scares. There was nothing. Then yesterday, I found something. A small folded paper wedged in my mailbox. No name, just a crude drawing of a face, long black hair, surgical mask, and eyes staring wide. Underneath, someone had written, "Still average. I think she saw me again. I'm not walking home anymore. Not ever. And if anyone in Kyoto sees a pale woman in a surgical mask at a crosswalk, don't stop. Don't talk. Don't answer. Just run. And for the love of everything, don't say yes." I don't know why I'm posting this here. Maybe I just need someone to tell me I'm not insane. Or maybe I am. Either way, I haven't slept in 3 nights, and I can still hear the train. No tracks near my apartment. Just that humming in the walls. For context, I live in Tokyo. Been commuting on the Yamano-T line for the better part of 5 years. Same routine, same times, same damn people half the time. It becomes background noise. You don't look anyone in the eye. You don't talk. You just exist until your stop comes. There was this woman I started noticing about a month ago. Always in the same seat, 3rd car from the front, by the window. Long black hair, stiff posture, hands folded neatly in her lap. I'm not a creep or anything, I swear, but she caught my attention because she never looked up, never shifted, not once, even when the train rocked or someone brushed past. She was just still. I figured she was just really tired or deep in thought, but it became a kind of weird routine. I'd board the train, glance toward that seat, and there she'd be, like a statue. My own private urban legend. Until last Thursday. It was a late shift, and I didn't catch the train until nearly midnight. The platform was mostly empty. I climbed into car 3 out of habit and saw her there. Alone. I took a seat farther down, 2 rows away, facing the opposite direction, just close enough to glance at her reflection in the window. She hadn't moved. Same hair, same hands, but the train felt off. It was too quiet. I realized there weren't any announcements, no station chimes, and I hadn't seen the conductor or another passenger since boarding. We passed through 3 stations. No one got on. No one got off. Doors opened, doors closed, then silence. The windows showed buildings I didn't recognize. At one point, I swear we passed through a forest. On the Yamano-T line, in central Tokyo, I turned back to look at the woman. She was staring at me, not in a normal way. Her head was tilted slightly, and her hair had parted just enough to show skin. Smooth, pale, empty. No eyes, no nose, no mouth, just a blank face. I stared, frozen. Every instinct screamed to run, to move, to hide. But I couldn't look away. Her head tilted farther. Not like a curious dog. More like a marionette with cut strings. The lights in the car flickered. When they came back, the car was empty. She was gone. I jumped from my seat and ran to the next car. And the next, completely empty, like the train had been gutted. My phone had no signal, no battery, even though it was fully charged when I boarded. I tried the emergency intercom. Nothing. The train didn't stop. I don't know how long I was on it. The windows went black after a while. Not like tunnels, like nothing. No reflection. No sense of movement. Then, out of nowhere, a voice on the intercom crackled in. Next stop, Meguro. I ran to the doors, ready to leap off if I had to. When the train stopped, I bolted onto the platform. Everything looked normal again. Late-night passengers, ads, bright lights. No one acted like anything had happened. I checked the time. It was 12:07 a.m. Only 7 minutes had passed. I've tried to take different routes home since then, even buses, but sometimes I see her through train windows as they pass, in reflections, in dreams, and always, that blank face. I asked an older coworker about it, half joking, trying not to sound crazy. He went pale, told me about the Nop Pirabo, faceless spirits that wander urban places, sometimes just to scare, sometimes to replace. He said, if you see one and it looks at you, it remembers you. So now, I don't ride the train anymore, but I still hear it, every night. I work for the city's transit maintenance division. Night crew. Yeah, the graveyard shift. It's not as bad as it sounds. Fewer people, fewer distractions. Just me, my flashlight, and miles of tunnels that most people pretend don't exist. You wouldn't believe how many forgotten corners there are down there. utility closets that haven't been opened in decades, staircases that go nowhere, whole platforms that used to be busy and now just rot in the dark. The city keeps expanding, but underneath, it just layers over itself like old wallpaper. Anyway, last week I got assigned a solo sweep of the Green Line's decommissioned branch, the tunnels beneath Sector D. This is where trains used to run back in the 70s, but it's all been shut down for years. No power, no access to the public, just a dusty, damp stretch of tunnel that smells like mildew and rusted metal. We mostly go down there to make sure nothing's collapsing or leaking, or that no idiot urban explorer has crawled in and died. Honestly, I thought it would be just another boring shift. I even brought my earbuds. Then I found the door. It wasn't supposed to be there. According to the schematic, the wall to my left should have just been concrete. But there, it was, a dented metal door with flaking paint and no label. I thought maybe it was a storage closet, or maybe a maintenance bunk that got walled off and forgotten. Curious, I gave it a tug. It wasn't even locked. Inside was a small tiled hallway, maybe 10 feet long, lit by a flickering fluorescent bulb. Beyond that, I found a public restroom, like old school subway bathroom style. Beige tiles, chipped sinks, metal mirrors too fogged to reflect anything clearly. The whole thing was musty and coated in grime, but it looked untouched, like it had been sealed before it could even start getting vandalized. And it was quiet, so damn quiet. I was about to back out and report it. Protocol says we're supposed to log sealed areas for safety. When I heard a noise, a thud, it came from the last stall on the right. Not loud, just enough to stop me in my tracks. I thought maybe an animal had gotten in. A rat, maybe, or a raccoon. I've dealt with worse. I took a step forward. My boots echoed off the tile. The air smelled, not like mildew anymore, something coppery, sweet, like old blood. As I reached for the stall door, it slammed shut. Fast, violent, I froze. Then I heard it. A voice, low, unmistakable. Red paper or blue. I'm telling you right now, there was no one in that stall. I saw under the door. No feet, no shadow, just that awful voice. It didn't sound robotic or ghostly or whatever. Just calm, too calm. I tried to speak, but my mouth was dry. All I managed was a raspy, "What?" And again that voice. Red paper or blue. I was suddenly freezing. The room felt like it dropped 20 degrees. My flashlight flickered. My radio crackled in my pocket, spitting out nonsense static. I didn't answer. I just backed up. My hand touched the bathroom door and slam. It closed behind me. I was trapped. I tried yanking it open, but it wouldn't budge. There was no lock, no latch, just smooth, cold metal. I turned back toward the stall. The door was cracked open now. Still no one behind it. But the voice came again. Red or blue? My heart was hammering. I didn't know what the hell it meant. Part of me wanted to shout, neither. But something told me that wouldn't help. So I did what any rational person does when faced with something absolutely irrational. I screamed, loud, desperate, for help, for God, for anything. And then silence. The light above me popped and died. The entire room plunged into pitch black. My flashlight dead. My radio dead. The only sound was my own breathing. Then, whispers, too many to count. Like a crowd of people just behind the walls. Like they were leaning in, listening. I could feel something approach. Not hear, not see. Just feel like pressure or gravity moving toward me, centered on the stall. I ran. I don't know how, I swear the door was stuck. But I crashed into it, and it gave way. I bolted into the hallway, back through the door, into the tunnel. Didn't stop running until I reached the checkpoint and collapsed. They thought I had a panic attack, gave me oxygen, told me to take a few days off. When I went back, I asked about that restroom. No one believed it existed. I even went back down there with my supervisor 2 days later. The wall was solid concrete. No door, no tile, no hallway, just dust. But I know what I saw, what I heard. That voice. The worst part, I looked it up. Red paper or blue, it's a damn Japanese urban legend. Akamanto. Supposed to haunt restrooms and ask you that exact question. Choose red, you bleed to death. Choose blue, you suffocate. They say the only way to survive is to refuse to answer. But I didn't answer, and it still found me. That night, after I got home, I found a strip of red paper on my bathroom floor. No one else lives with me. I don't own red paper. And this morning, blue. I don't think I escaped. I think I'm just waiting. I've been fishing in the rivers of Ishikawa all my life. Family trade, passed down from my grandfather to my father, and to me and my younger brother, Ren. We're not commercial, just local trappers, eel nets, the occasional deep line cast for perch. Quiet work, peaceful. Until 2 summers ago, when something came out of the water and took him. I'm not really into Reddit. My niece is the one who convinced me to post here after I told her what happened. Said there's a whole community for this weird, paranormal stuff. I don't know if it fits, but I need to get it out. People need to know. It was August, middle of Abend season, when the line between this world and the next is supposed to blur. We were working later than usual, because a freak rainstorm had thrown off the currents earlier in the week, and we were behind on our nets. I remember the air being thick, the kind of sticky, post-rain heat that makes your clothes feel like they're glued on. The river was still swollen, faster than usual. Brown water churning past our little boat like it was eager to get somewhere. We had just pulled up the last eel trap when Wren spotted something drifting downriver near the reeds. I saw it too, a small wooden boat, more like a skiff. Looked old. At first, I figured someone upstream had lost it in the storm, but as it floated closer, we both went quiet. There was someone in it, a woman sitting perfectly still, soaked to the bone, hair long and dark and tangled over her shoulders. She was in a white kimono, or what used to be white, now stained gray with river mud. Her skin was pale, too pale, like the color of boiled fish meat. We pulled our boat alongside hers. She didn't speak at first, just looked at us with this expression I can't explain. Not fear, not relief, something in between, something old. Wren reached out and asked, "Are you okay?" She blinked, and then her lips moved. "Take me home." That's all she said. I'll admit it, I was ready to row away. My gut was twisting hard, but Wren, being Wren, helped her into our boat. She was cold, not just damp cold, like she'd been in the water for hours. He wrapped his jacket around her shoulders. She smiled at him. It didn't reach her eyes. I asked her name. She didn't answer. She just kept whispering, "Home, take me home." Wren offered to steer us back to the dock while I sat across from her. I couldn't stop staring at the water clinging to her. It never dripped off, never evaporated. Her kimono just stayed wet, like it was feeding on the moisture. I turned my head for a second to secure our gear. Just a second. And when I looked back, the boat was empty. She was gone. Wren stood at the edge, staring into the river. "Did she fall?" I asked, already lunging for the life preserver. He didn't move. He just turned to me, and I swear to God, his eyes were full of something like sorrow, or maybe acceptance. "She's waiting," he said. Then he jumped in. I screamed. I threw the preserver, dove in after him. But the current was strong, stronger than it should have been in that part of the river. I got pushed downstream, slammed against a rock shelf. By the time I pulled myself back into the boat, coughing water and blood, he was gone. I called the authorities. Divers' dogs. They searched the river and along the shoreline, but nothing. That night, around 2 a.m., I went down to the dock. The water had calmed. The moon was out. And there, in the shallows, was the skiff again. It was empty, except there were handprints on the side. Wet, pale handprints. Dozens of them, like something had climbed up from the deep. I left and stayed with my sister for a while. Stopped fishing. Couldn't even look at the river without hearing her voice. A month later, a local elder, an old woman who runs a little shrine near the edge of town, asked why I wasn't on the water anymore. I hesitated, then told her. She went quiet. Then she told me about the funayure, the boat ghosts, spirits of the drowned, angry or mournful, who appear on the water during Abend. They ask for help, plead to be taken home. But they don't mean your home. They mean the other one, the one beneath the river. Sometimes, she said, they find someone willing, or naive, or just kind. She gave me a charm, said if I ever went back on the river, I should wear it and never answer anyone I saw adrift, no matter how real they looked. I never went back, but sometimes I still dream of Ren. I see him standing knee-deep in water, soaked to the skin, looking over his shoulder, looking at me. And behind him, arms rise up out of the river, gentle and white, wrapping around him like a bride on her wedding night. A few people asked if the skiff was ever found. No, the skiff was never found again. And yes, Ren's body was never recovered. The official report says presumed drowned. But I know better. Stay off the river during Abend. And if a woman in white asks you to take her home, don't. I don't know if this belongs here, but I've been carrying this story for over a year, and I can't stop thinking about it. Maybe sharing it will help me sleep again. Last summer, I took a solo hiking trip through the Kaizo Mountains in Nagano Prefecture. I'm a city guy, but I grew up hearing my grandfather talk about the old shrines in the hills, and figured it would be a good way to connect with that part of my heritage. Most of the trails were well marked, and I wasn't planning anything too extreme. Just a few days out, a journal, a tent, and some peace. On my second day, I veered slightly off the main path when I saw an old wooden sign nailed to a tree. It was barely legible, but I could make out the kanji for shrine and spirit. It pointed up a narrow path I hadn't seen on the map. I probably should have ignored it, but something about it felt right, like a quiet invitation. The trail was overgrown and clearly hadn't been used in years. Spider webs stretched between branches, and the air grew cooler as I climbed. After maybe an hour, I reached a small clearing. In the center stood a tiny shrine, weathered and covered in moss, but intact. No torii gate, just a stone base and a wooden structure the size of a garden shed. Offerings, old coins, rice crackers, and even a dusty bottle of sake rested at its foot. As I approached, I heard the crunch of sandals on gravel. A figure emerged from behind the shrine, short, draped in traditional monk robes, and wearing a wide straw kasa that shadowed his face. He bowed deeply, the brim of his hat almost touching the ground. I froze, startled but not afraid. I bowed back politely. He didn't speak. He just straightened, tilted his head, and then slowly looked up. Under the hat, his face was wrong. He had one enormous eye centered on his forehead, lidless and wet, with a black pupil that seemed to shimmer. Below it stretched a grin far too wide for a human mouth, thin lips pulled impossibly tight across yellowed teeth. I couldn't move. I don't know how long we stood like that, me rooted in place, him staring at me with that single eye and smiling. He didn't speak, didn't blink. He just stared and smiled. Eventually, he raised one hand and pointed toward the trail. Not the way I came from, but a different one, leading downhill. Then he stepped back behind the shrine and vanished from view. I turned and walked. Fast. I didn't run because I felt like running would make it worse somehow. I didn't stop until I reached a main trail again, hours later. I made camp there, far from that shrine, and tried to tell myself I was imagining things. But that night, I dreamed of the monk, of that eye watching me. The next morning, I passed a group of older hikers and asked if they knew anything about an old shrine up the slope. One of them frowned, then looked around as if making sure no one else was listening. "You must have seen the Hidat Sumiko Zo," he said quietly. "One-eyed monk spirit, trickster, not evil, but not to be trifled with. They show themselves to people who walk too far off the path. Sometimes they follow you back." He smiled like it was a joke, but it didn't feel like one. When I got home, I checked the photos on my phone. All were fine except one. A blurry shot I must have taken accidentally when I arrived at the shrine. In the far corner of the frame, half hidden in the trees, there was a figure in monk robes. The hat covered his face, but you could see the smile. I deleted it. I don't know if it helped. Some nights, I still feel watched. Sometimes I dream of gravel crunching and a single, unblinking eye. If you hike in the Kaizo Mountains and find an old sign pointing toward a forgotten shrine, don't follow it. Some spirits don't like being seen, and some smile too wide for good reason. I've been working as a janitor at a rural school in northern Japan for over 2 decades. The job is straightforward. Clean the classrooms, hallways, and restrooms after the students and teachers have gone home. The solitude never bothered me. In fact, I found it peaceful. That was until the night I heard the laughter. It was a cold winter evening, and the snow outside had muffled all external sounds. I was mopping the second-floor hallway when I heard a faint dragging noise, like something heavy being pulled across the floor. I paused, listening intently. The school was supposed to be empty. Then came the laughter, high-pitched, manic, and echoing through the corridor. I turned the corner, and that's when I saw her, a girl, or what was left of her, crawling towards me. She had no lower body, just a torso and arms, dragging herself with unnatural speed. Her long black hair obscured her face, but I could see the gleam of her eyes beneath it. The sound teek-teek resonated with each movement she made. I dropped my mop and ran, heart pounding, not daring to look back. I locked myself in the supply closet, praying she wouldn't find me. The dragging sound grew louder, closer, then stopped. Silence. I stayed there until dawn. The next day, I considered quitting, but I needed the job. I convinced myself it was a hallucination, a trick of the mind due to fatigue. But the sightings continued. Each night, the dragging sound and laughter returned. I started researching and came across the legend of Teek-Teek, a vengeful spirit of a girl who was cut in half by a train and now haunts places, dragging her upper body and seeking victims to share her fate. I don't know why she's here in this school, but I fear she's chosen me. I write this as a warning. If you ever hear dragging sounds followed by manic laughter in an empty hallway, run. And whatever you do, don't look back. My wife and I recently returned from a trip to the countryside of Kyoto Prefecture. We stayed at a traditional ryokan, a charming inn, with sliding shoji doors, futons, and tatami mats. It was the kind of place that feels untouched by time. The first night was peaceful. The second, however, was when things took a turn. Around midnight, I was stirred from sleep by a faint scratching sound. It was subtle, like nails brushing against wood. I assumed it was a small animal beneath the floorboards and tried to ignore it. But the scratching persisted, growing slightly louder, more insistent. My wife, Aiko, whispered, "Do you hear that?" I nodded, both of us now fully awake. We decided to investigate. Carefully, we slid the futon aside and peeled back one of the tatami mats. Beneath it was darkness, but as our eyes adjusted, we saw them. Eyes, hundreds of them, blinking in unison, staring back at us. We froze, unable to comprehend what we were seeing. The eyes didn't seem aggressive, just watchful. Suddenly, a whisper filled the room, though no mouth had spoken. It was a chorus of voices, soft and unintelligible, but filled with emotion, sorrow, longing, perhaps even curiosity. Terrified, we replaced the tatami mat and sat in silence until dawn. The next morning, we spoke to the innkeeper, an elderly woman named Mrs. Sato. When we described our experience, her face grew pale. "You encountered the Moku Moku Ren," she said. They are spirits that inhabit neglected shoji and tatami. They watch, always watch, but they mean no harm unless provoked. She explained that these spirits often appear in places where the boundaries between the physical and spiritual worlds are thin. The only way to dispel them is to repair the damaged areas they inhabit. We checked the tatami and found small tears and holes, signs of age and wear. With Mrs. Sato's help, we patched them up. That night, the scratching ceased. The room felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. We left the ryokan with a newfound respect for the unseen and the importance of maintaining harmony between worlds. If you ever find yourself in an old Japanese inn and hear whispers beneath the tatami, remember, some eyes are meant to remain unseen. I studied abroad in Kyoto last year. I'd always been into vintage stuff, old cameras, paper fans, Edo-era prints, that kind of thing. So, on one of my last weekends before flying home, I went to a little flea market outside of a Shinto shrine near Arashiyama. It was drizzling, not many tourists, which made it feel even more like I'd stepped back in time. That's when I found the mirror. It was sitting at the back of an old woman's stall, propped up awkwardly between two cracked ceramic lanterns. The glass was oval-shaped, slightly warped, framed in dark, hand-carved wood that looked almost burned. It wasn't ornate or beautiful, but something about it caught my eye. The kind of object you don't even think about, but your hand just reaches for it before your brain catches up. Only 500 yen, the woman said, smiling. But she wouldn't look me in the eye. I didn't even bargain. I should have known something was off, especially when she wrapped it in newspaper without being asked. Almost like she didn't want to touch it longer than she had to. But I was too caught up in the thrill of finding something old, something unique. That night in my dorm, I set it on the desk facing the bed. And from that moment on, I didn't sleep properly again. At first, it was little things. Whispers, very faint, like someone murmuring from the hallway, but always when I was alone. Always behind me. I'd turn and nothing. But when I looked in the mirror, it was like my reflection took half a second too long to catch up. I convinced myself I was just tired. Jet lag, end of semester stress, right. Then came the knocking. Soft, not at the door, not from the walls, but from behind the glass. One night, I sat at my desk scrolling on my laptop, and I heard a dull tap, tap, tap. I thought it was someone outside, until I realized it was coming from the mirror itself. I looked up, and I swear on my life, my reflection blinked when I didn't. I moved, it didn't. I jerked backward and fell out of my chair, heart punching my ribs. When I scrambled up, everything was normal again. My reflection mirrored me perfectly, like nothing had happened. I told myself it was a trick of the warped glass, a fluke, but it kept happening. Every night, the whispers, sometimes giggling, sometimes breathy muttering in a language I didn't quite understand, like something old and rusted trying to imitate Japanese. The reflection grew. Wrong. Its smile lingered when mine didn't. Sometimes its lips moved even when I was completely still. I started covering the mirror with a towel before bed. That didn't help. One night, I woke up around 2 a.m. to a weird draft. I sat up in bed, and the towel had slid off. I didn't move it. I hadn't touched it, but it was bunched on the floor, and the mirror was completely uncovered. And my reflection wasn't asleep. It was sitting upright in bed, staring at me. I jumped out of bed and threw the damn thing into the closet, piling my suitcase on top of it. I told myself I was being paranoid, that maybe I'd fallen asleep and dreamed it. But the next morning, the closet door was cracked open and the suitcase was moved. Just slightly, but I noticed. I asked one of my Japanese classmates about it. Just offhandedly mentioned I'd bought an old mirror and was having strange dreams. She stopped chewing mid-bite and said, "Did you hear it say Yuan?" I felt cold all over. "Yuan," I repeated. She nodded. "It's a yakai, old spirit. They live in walls, in mirrors. They whisper to scare you. Then they scream Yuan to curse you. You shouldn't keep something like that. Throw it away." I laughed it off, even though I felt sick. I tried to brush it aside, but that word lodged itself in my brain like a splinter. My last night in Kyoto, I decided to get rid of the mirror. I pulled it out of the closet and set it down one more time, thinking maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe it was just an antique with a weird vibe. Maybe I'd take it home after all. That's when it happened. I sat on the bed across from the mirror, just staring at it, daring it. My reflection was staring too. Same pose, same expression. And then it turned. Its head rotated, slow and unnatural, looking directly at me, even though I hadn't moved. It smiled, but not my smile. And then, loud and guttural, it screamed, "Yuan!" The mirror shattered instantly. I didn't throw anything, didn't move. I swear to God it broke on its own. The glass cracked outward from the center, a spider web of fractures. I ran out of the room and slept in the common lounge. In the morning, I returned, thinking maybe it had all been a bad dream. But the mirror was still shattered. And in one of the shards, just one, shaped like a little triangle, I saw it. A second face, not mine, pale, blurred like a reflection caught mid-movement. But the eyes were completely black, and it was smiling, too wide, I wrapped the mirror in 3 layers of towels, shoved it in a trash bag, and took it to a dumpster 4 blocks away. I didn't tell anyone. Since I've been home, I haven't seen anything. No whispers, no broken glass. But every time I walk by a mirror at night, I hesitate. Just a second. Just long enough to make sure I'm the only one looking back. If you ever visit Kyoto and someone offers you a mirror that feels wrong, don't buy it. And if you do, don't let it talk. I've never been one to believe in the supernatural. Ghost stories were just that, stories. But something happened during my trip to Japan that I can't explain, and it's been haunting me ever since. I was traveling through the Japanese countryside, seeking solitude and inspiration for my writing. I found a quaint, old house listed on a local rental site. It was a single-story home, traditional in design, nestled between rolling hills and dense woods. The owner mentioned it hadn't been occupied in years, but was maintained regularly. The first few days were peaceful. I spent my time exploring the nearby trails and writing on the porch. But on the 3rd night, I began hearing footsteps above me. At first, I dismissed it. Maybe it was the house settling or animals on the roof. But the footsteps were deliberate, paced, and they continued every night at the same time, around 2 a.m. I decided to investigate. I climbed onto the roof during the day, but there was no sign of any animals or disturbances. The roof was intact, and there was no attic or crawl space above the ceiling. On the 5th night, the footsteps returned, louder and more erratic. I lay in bed, heart pounding, trying to muster the courage to look up. When I finally did, I saw her. A pale figure clung to the ceiling, her body twisted in unnatural angles. Her long black hair hung down, obscuring her face. But what struck me were her hands. Each palm bore a single, unblinking eye, staring directly at me. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. I just lay there, paralyzed with fear as she crawled across the ceiling, her eyes never leaving mine. Then, as suddenly as she appeared, she vanished. The footsteps ceased, and the house fell silent. I left the next morning, cutting my trip short. I didn't tell anyone what I saw, fearing they'd think I was crazy. But every night since, I hear footsteps above me, no matter where I am. I don't know who or what she is, but I believe she's following me. I was driving from Sendai to Aomori late last fall, helping a friend move. He flew out early and asked me to bring up some of his stuff in my beat-up little K car. I don't mind long drives, especially in Japan, where the roads are smooth and the vending machines are everywhere. Like everywhere. You can be in the absolute sticks and still find one glowing blue and red in the dark, like a lighthouse for the sugar-starved. It was maybe 1:30 a.m. and in the middle of nowhere. Trees on both sides of the road. My phone's signal dropped out an hour earlier. I was running low on caffeine and stopped at a vending machine tucked next to a rusted bus stop shelter and an old payphone booth that probably hadn't worked since 1998. Just one machine, sun-faded, humming loud enough to sound alive, like it was breathing. I got out, stretched, and walked up to it. The light flickered a little when I approached, and the display glitched like the pixel prices scrambled for a second before fixing themselves. That should have been the first red flag. I popped in a coin and bent down to grab a canned coffee. That's when I heard it. Crunching, not leaves, not branches, but bones. I know that sound. I've broken enough knuckles and had enough dentist appointments to know the difference. This was louder, hollow, like someone biting down on a femur the size of a lamppost. I turned around slowly, and I swear on everything I saw it. At first, it just looked like something white behind the trees. Moonlight catching on branches, maybe. But then it moved. It stood up. It had to be 20 meters tall, easy. A skeleton. A giant damn skeleton, hunched down like it had been crawling through the forest. Ribs wider than the vending machine, arms like telephone poles. It straightened up, vertebrae cracking, and tilted its skull toward me. Empty sockets with no eyes, but I felt it watching me, smiling, grinning, and then I heard it, not out loud, inside my skull. I see you. My ears started ringing so hard I thought my brain would burst. My legs gave out, and I hit the ground hard. The dirt vibrated beneath me like a low-frequency bass rumble, like its footsteps were shaking the earth. Even though it wasn't walking, I forced myself up, stumbled to my car, fumbled the key, dropped it, screamed at myself to move, and then it was gone. Just gone. No thundering retreat into the woods. No crashing. One blink, it was there, looming over the trees like a white nightmare, and the next, nothing. Dead silence. I sat in the car, shaking for probably 10 minutes before I could breathe properly again. The vending machine was still humming. My coffee was still in the tray. I should have just peeled out, but I needed to prove to myself that I wasn't losing my mind. I got out, grabbed the can, because, honestly, I still needed caffeine, and took one last look at the woods. Everything was still. No wind, no crickets. But I noticed something. The ground behind the machine was flattened, like something massive had been crouching there. And the trees, the tops were broken, snapped clean off, like something tall had pushed through them. I got back in the car and didn't stop again until I hit Aomori just after sunrise. Here's the worst part. When I got home later that week, I checked the dash cam. It auto-records any time the car's on, front and rear. Most of the video was boring. Driving, darkness, radio static. But at 1:37 a.m., just after I left the vending machine, the rear cam picked up something. A towering white shape, reflected in the back window for just a second. It wasn't a trick of the light. It was too clear. It was grinning, and I swear it was following me. I've done some digging since then. There's a legend Gasha Dokuro, a yokai made of bones, giant, silent, always hungry, formed from the unburied dead, especially those who died in war or famine. Supposedly, they roam the countryside at night, looking for lone travelers to crush and drink the blood from their snapped skulls. Cheerful, right? They say you don't hear them coming. If you do, it's already too late. But I heard it, and it saw me. I haven't driven alone at night since. And if you ever find yourself on some dark mountain road in northern Japan, low on caffeine, don't stop for the vending machine glowing in the trees. And if you hear crunching, run. And whatever you do,